Hello, at this point in your journey, you should have taken a break from videos and worked through the tutorial of making a lower third graphic in Illustrator. I published that PDF of the book instructions, and the reason I'm having you do this is so that you actually build the file and understand its pieces, so that you understand when we bring it in to After Effects, we actually can animate all those different layers and pieces, which is pretty cool. So, assuming you've done all that and it is saved with the correct file name, which is poolside L3 underscore BG, and you saved it in the graphics folder within all of your book files, we should be ready to go. So, we're now going to go to After Effects. This is what you should have from your last go round. And we're going to click in your project panel just to make sure that nothing is selected or even twirled open. So I'm going to twirl everything shut and make sure nothing is highlighted. From here, we're going to import that Illustrator file. So we're going to do a File, Import File. Command I, if you're doing this a lot, will come in handy. And then we're going to navigate to wherever your multimedia files are. We're going to go into the graphics, and this is where you should have saved poolside L3 BG. Notice that it's an Illustrator document. And we're going to say OK to that. And when we get the pop-up window, we are going to make some choices here. So how do we want to bring it in? We want it to come in as footage. Obviously, that seems weird being an Illustrator file, but we're bringing it in as footage, and merged layers. So we're going to say OK to that. And here it comes. And it's an Illustrator file, vector art, sitting loosely, not in any subfolder at this point. So what we're going to do now is make a brand new composition. So the last time we worked in After Effects, we actually started in Premiere with a time lapse, and then we exported that to After Effects, and we made the illusion of being on a dolly that was going up and down. So we're going to start brand new from inside After Effects. After Effects allows us to create multiple compositions within the same project. So our project is still called AE01, but we're going to have lots of different projects inside of here. We're going to make a composition that will have a lower third background graphic and some editable text. This composition is going to act as a template for the lower thirds. So we talked about that when each of the characters comes on for the first time on screen in the poolside video, we want this lower third graphic to pop up that says their name and their title. So the first time we see them on screen, this has to show up. And a lower third, presumably you guys are watching the news a little bit now, you see that all the time. It's a graphic that populates with information about what you're seeing. Once we get this template done, we're going to make duplicates of it and easily change it out for all of our different speakers. I think there's 5 or 6 of them. So we're going to start up brand new in After Effects. We're going to say Composition, New Composition. Command N is the shortcut. And here's our pop-up window. We want to do a few things here before we say OK, so be patient. We're going to change more than one thing in this window. We're going to name this Lower Third. And for whatever reason, the book does it with numbers, so I'm just going to do what they do. AE, After Effects, underscore template. So lower third, AE template. In the basic window here, from our preset, we're going to look at all these different options that we have. And the one that we want to choose is HD TV 1080, that's the resolution, and then 24, which is the frames per second. Notice that that width and height matches what we've been working with, 1920 by 1080. And the frame rate, we're going to tweak a smidge to be perfectly accurate, 23.976. All right, then we're going to look down here at our duration. And depending on what yours says, we want to make it 5:00. This is actually written, excuse me, in hours, minutes, seconds, and frames. So no hours, no minutes, 5 seconds, no more frames. So the duration of this animation of when our lower third shows up is going to be 5 seconds. It's a guess. but it's a good guess. And it might be too long in some cases, but that's fine. The other thing of note is background color. Notice that it's defaulted to black. If it isn't, make sure it is. And that's just going to give us a screen right here that has a black background. So it might look empty, but it actually has this black background. From here, we are going to say, okay, and now we see here is a new composition. It's called the lower third template, and here it is. Notice the icon for a new composition is different. It's something we haven't seen so far. So here it is. This is the one that we're working on right here. All right. From our project panel, we're going to grab the file that says Poolside BG Illustrator. We're going to grab our Illustrator file, and we're literally going to drag it straight down into the timeline layers panel. So remember I told you the timeline is different here. Not only do we have a timeline that reacts to time, seconds and frames, we also have a layer stack over here, and just like in everything else, what's on top covers what's on bottom. So the layer stack becomes important as well. Once we've gotten this graphic here in our window, so this is the window set up to be 1920 by 1080, we're going to just lock this temporarily. So to the left of the file name, you see a bunch of icons: visibility, audio, solo, lock. We just want to click on this empty square in the lock column to put the padlock on that. Now at least whatever we do from here, the background is not going to bump around. Our next step is going to be creating a text layer to go on top of this. So we're going to come up to the top and choose Layer, New Text. So Layer, New Text. And we see our cursor ready to go. Ignore what I'm doing right now because this is set from the last time I ran through this. So whatever, when you look over here in your character panel, whatever font, size, color, anything set up here that you have, don't worry because we're going to change this together. So in this spot, we're going to type in the word first, starts with an F, and then last. So first name, last name. And then to actually select that, if we hit return, we're just going to bump down a line, but to select it so we can make changes to it, we're going to hold Command or Control if you're on a PC and hit return. That puts our selection box around it, and we can now go over to the character panel and we can make some changes. We see it's selected by these red boundary boxes. So over here, if it's not already, choose Arial and Regular. And in our font weight, we can either scroll with our scrubby finger, or we can just type in the actual number. 70 is what we want. And for tracking, we want it to be 150. The other thing we want to do is we want this type to be white. So there's color pickers here, but they give you two options: set to black, set to white. So if we hover over, I'm right over here, the set to white, and click on that, it picks white for us. The other thing we want is that we want all of this to be in all caps. So I'm going to come down here and click on the all caps button. My bold is on and doesn't need to be, so if yours happen to be on, turn that off. All we want is the all caps, 70 pixels, 150 leading, Arial, Regular, and white. Then we're going to pop down to the Paragraph tab, and we're going to choose Left Align. In case yours was centered or anything else, we're going to choose Left Align. All right, let's look at our layers panel in the timeline, and you can see that new items are added on top, so it keeps pushing your other ones down to the bottom. And this is a text layer, and we can see that it chose to name it with the generic text that we typed in. So we're going to click on this layer over here and select it, and then we're going to hit the return or enter key. Whoops, got to select it over here first, and then hit the enter key, and that's going to allow us to change the name. So we're going to call this name instead. And then I hit return again to accept that change. All right, because this text is white and it's going to appear in front of a light background, we're going to apply an effect that's going to give it a faint shadow using the drop shadow. So with your name layer still selected down here in the layers panel, we're going to go up to our top menu and choose Effect, perspective, drop shadow. This automatically popped us into the effect controls panel, and here's all the different things you can do with your drop shadow. You can change the color, the opacity, the direction, the distance, how far away it is, how soft it is. We're just going to tweak a couple of things in here. The distance is at 5. We're going to lower it down to 3. And then I just hit tab to go to the next field. And in the softness, I'm going to change it to 10 and hit tab again. All that does is rotate through your choices up here, but it also applies it so you can see. So it's a much softer drop shadow. So distance of 3 and softness of 10. And then we're happy with that. So we like this. We also want to have a line down here that is their title. And we want it to look almost exactly like that, just be a little smaller and less tracking. So instead of starting absolutely from scratch, going through that whole process again for a second line, we're going to use our smarts and we're going to duplicate the layer and just tweak it. So we're going to grab the layer down here in our layers panel within the timeline. We're going to highlight name, and then we're going to come up and choose edit, duplicate. Okay, it's not copy, it's duplicate. So in our layers panel, it gave us name 2 with all the same settings. It's literally on top of this one, so you don't see a difference other than, you know, our drop shadow probably got a little darker because it's doubled up. Yep, I'm turning that eyeball on and off so you can see. So our new layer is the same thing on top of this right now. All right, let's select this layer and hit the return key so that we can name it better. And we're going to call this one title and hit return again to accept that change. All right, only because we're kind of spatial creatures, ultimately the title is going to go below the first name. So we're just going to drag this down in our layer stack. Come on. So that it matches in our layer stack what we're ultimately going to see on the screen. It makes no difference because once we space those out, they're not going to be on top of each other, but it's kind of logical. So we're just going to do that. All right. With our title layer selected, so the one that we just did, we're going to start seeing how we actually use After Effects to change things. And we use keys on our keyboard as shortcuts to do this. So I need you to press the letter P, as in pig, or position. Notice that it twirled out the value for position. This is located at the horizontal and vertical coordinates of 960 and 540. We're going to change the vertical, so we're going to click on that one, and we're going to change it to 600 and hit return. So we just moved it down using numbers. You can use the selection tool and physically move things around, and these numbers will update accordingly. The book directions have me putting in an exact number, so I'm showing that to you right here. So the position of this is slightly further down. All right, now in our timeline, down here in the layers panel, we're going to double click on this layer. And what that does is highlight it, and we can actually do some editing on it. So it's, you can see it should be all highlighted in red. We're now going to change where it says first last to say title. And because we still have the all caps on in our character, it doesn't matter if you're paying attention when you're typing, it's going to be turned into all caps for you anyway. We are going to give this a little hierarchy, and instead of being 70 in size, we're going to make this a smidge smaller at 48. And we're going to change our tracking to be just 50. So their name is going to be the biggest thing, their title is going to be considerably smaller. All right. The next thing that we want to do, we want to move these two text layers to the left to balance out the design. So the lower third graphic is this colorful part right here. and we're going to actually want our words more over in this area. So back in our timeline/layers panel, the title layer should still be selected, but we're going to hold down Command as well and click on the name layer to select both of them. And notice up here in your composition window, you do see all of the red boxes around this. We're going to press the P for position key, and notice how down here it went away. It folded back up into it. We're going to press it again, letter P. Because we had both name and title selected, it twirled open the position for both of them. We're going to choose and scrub only the horizontal position, that's this first one, down to 450. So instead of being at 960, we're going to drag her to the left until we get down to 450. 449 is fine. Notice that because they were both selected, they both moved, but their verticals didn't change, which is good. So now that we have our template text layers in place, where we think they need to be relative to their background, we're going to do a couple of things. We're going to shrink it all down. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to unlock our poolside layer down here. So it was locked. We're going to click to unlock it. We're now going to push Command A to select all three layers. So there's the graphic background and then the two text layers. What we want to do now is scale this all down. It's too big. So the keyboard shortcut to twirl open scale is the letter S. So by pushing that letter S with all three highlighted, we see the scale show up for all of them. So if we want to make this half as big, we're going to scale it down to 50%. Because these are linked, and we have a link here, height and width is linked, we can click on any one of these variables and type in 50 and hit tab, and they'll all change to 50%. However, I think you noticed everything shrunk separately from each other, and we don't want that. We want to do a Command Z, which may be easier said than done. You got to click to get out of it, and then Command Z. We can't do it that way. It's not quite that easy. So we want everything to maintain a relative scale to each other. We have to scale them as a group. And to scale them as a group, we have to use something called null objects and parenting. And that's going to be a whole separate tutorial. So at this point, please make sure that you save this file. So we don't have the star up here, and we're going to come back to this in a minute. I'm also going to just click away and not have anything selected. So click in the dead spot down here so we don't have anything selected. But your file should be saved, and we're going to go on to another tutorial, and once we understand that, we're going to come back to this and keep moving forward. Notice in our timeline down here, we have multiple projects open. This is our lower third template that we're working on. But we also still have our time lapse over here. So we can have lots of different projects open, all saved under this one After Effects master file. All right, we're saved here. We're going to move on to another tutorial.